Your house looks ordinary, but right now, physics is happening everywhere. You don't need a laboratory to see physics. You only need to look around. And some of the strangest physics is hiding inside things you use every single day. But can you explain why they behave the way they do? Let's test your physics. Why does a fan make you feel cooler? The obvious answer seems simple. Moving air. The real trick is happening directly on your skin. But that's only part of the story. Moving air helps water molecules escape from your sweat faster. That evaporation takes energy with it, so your skin loses heat. So if a fan doesn't actually cool the air, how does it make you feel so much cooler? In fact, the motor eventually adds a little heat to the room and makes the fan blade spin faster. Now watch this. Open one door, and another can suddenly move. When air moves through connected spaces, the pressure can change. That difference creates a force, which can push or pull another door. So the door isn't moving randomly. You're watching a fluid, air, push another object. The reason is invisible. Air pressure. Here's a strange one. Why does metal feel colder than wood? Imagine both objects are actually at exactly the same temperature. The difference isn't their temperature. It's how quickly they transfer heat. Metal conducts heat away from your hand much faster. Wood transfers that energy much more slowly. So metal isn't necessarily colder. Your hand is simply losing heat faster. Now look into a mirror. What exactly is being reversed?
Most people would say left and right. But that's not actually what the mirror reverses. A mirror reverses the direction perpendicular to its surface. In simple terms, front becomes back.
Left and right only seem reversed because we imagine ourselves turning around.
And that brings us to another everyday mystery. Why does water sometimes flow smoothly? then suddenly become chaotic? The answer involves a competition between smooth motion and disturbances. As flow conditions change, tiny disturbances can grow. Instead of neat layers, the fluid develops swirling motion. This is turbulence, and predicting it remains one of physics' famously difficult problems. Here's something extraordinary. Ice floats. Most substances become denser when they become solid. But water behaves differently. When water freezes, its molecules lock into a more open structure. That structure takes up more space, making ice less dense than liquid water. So the ice stays on top instead of sinking. And that unusual property helps cold water environments remain habitable. Why can two pans on the same stove behave so differently? Because materials don't transfer and store heat in exactly the same way. Some materials spread heat quickly. Others respond more slowly, but can store a lot of thermal energy. That's why the material of an everyday object can completely change how it behaves. Your phone can become warm, even when you aren't touching it. Inside that tiny device, billions of electronic operations can happen every second. Electrical energy is constantly being transformed. Some of that energy becomes useful work. And some eventually becomes heat. So that warmth isn't mysterious. Why does a window suddenly turn cloudy when the air is humid? Warm air can contain water vapor. When that moist air touches a colder surface, some of the vapor condenses into tiny liquid droplets. And those droplets scatter light, making the glass look foggy. Air looks completely empty, but under the right conditions, it can suddenly conduct electricity. Normally, air is a good electrical insulator. but a sufficiently strong electric field can accelerate charged particles. Those particles can collide with molecules, creating even more charged particles. That cascading process can turn normally insulating air into a temporary conducting path. And that's how a spark is born.
Now step into an elevator.
As it accelerates upward, you can briefly feel heavier.
But your mass didn't change. The floor has to push upward harder to accelerate you along with the elevator.
And when the elevator slows, that feeling can reverse. Gravity didn't change, your acceleration did, and that's the secret. Physics wasn't hiding in your house. Your house was showing you physics all along. Follow Trendz Science SK and start looking at your everyday world differently.